Welcome to the 14th session of this course, and now we're going to talk about CSS padding properties. Previously, we talked about the margin property. Margin property basically specifies the space before the component. So if you have this component here, this is basically the border. Margin defines the space from your screen and where the component is starting. So this initial space is basically what margin is. So if this is again my component, margin defines the space before the component starts. However, when we talk about something called padding, padding means inside the component. So once you have this box, see this is a space here. How do I control this space that the character should not start right at the edge, but there should be a space here. So this space that we talk about, this is what we mean by padding. Okay, so padding basically is the space inside the component. Let me show you what exactly I mean. So when we use padding, it's basically used to create space around an element's content. So again, in this case, I have a component. Okay. Inside the component, when we give a border, we see a border around that component as a whole. But when we use the text inside that component, padding controls how much space should be inside this component. So now remember, this is where the object has already begun. This is not the screen area. If this is my screen area here, this is basically what margin does. So margin controls this property. Okay, but padding basically controls this thing. So this is where the component has begun. I have already given it a border. Now inside this area, this is where our padding basically starts. This is where the magic happens with respect to padding. So we have two ways of controlling space. We control the space from the screen's edge, okay, using a margin, and then we control the space using something called padding. That basically means that once you have a border around a component, okay, we have already talked about border as well. So once you give a border around a component, inside the border area, how much space do you need? Do you want the component to start right at the border, or do you want there some space to be from left, from top, from bottom, and from right? Same thing as it goes. Okay. So for padding, again, we have various different attributes and property values. So we use padding basically means space from the top view. Padding right basically means from the right side of your screen. Okay. This is your right. This becomes my top. And then we have padding bottom, basically means this is the padding bottom area. Okay. And then we have a padding left, which is this area, which is most commonly used thing that we do. Okay. So space inside the component is what we refer to in terms of padding. Again, it will have pixel values. So whatever pixel value you specify, that will be given as a space area. Padding can be used as a shorthand operator like every other CSS that we have discussed so far. So you can write just the padding property, but basically this means that it will have 4 attributes with separated by a space, no comma, nothing. So you just write one value, space second value, space third value, space fourth value. The first one is the padding. So first becomes my top, this becomes my right, this becomes my bottom, and then this becomes left. So basically it starts from the top and goes in a clockwise manner from the left. So when we specify these 4 values, this is my what top is, right, bottom, and left. In one line you can write all these 4 attributes, or you can go even further and write a very single value if you want to have same space around the component. So for example, you can just write padding and 25. What this will basically mean that give 25 space from top will also be 25, your right will also be 25 space, your bottom will also be 25 space, and your left will also be 25 space. So once you write single value here, x and colon with padding itself, it means that all 4 directions will have same value. However, if you want a different value, you can specify them in a shorthand manner or just one value. So you can just write if you just want a space from the top and don't need to change the space from any other components or any other directions. So just write right bottom, or just write left, or just write whatever values you want to specify. Okay. Now, padding with element width, this is something that we need to understand before I go and show you more examples of what exactly I mean by padding. So when we use CSS width property, is basically or there's also a property called width here. Now what it basically means that when we use width as with padding, it will add these 2 things together. So simply speaking, I have this component here and I have given it some padding here. Okay, so this is a padding here. However, this div is 30 pixels wide as well. So see this pixel is 300 pixel wide. Okay, so this is the width of a 3 pixel 300 wide. Similarly, if I come here with this div element, okay, this is again 300 width. The width of this component has been set to 300. However, because we have given it some padding of 25 pixels, and we have given it padding of from left and right. See, so from left and right padding has been given. So this basically means that 25 pixels will be added here, plus 25 pixels at the right, okay, plus the width of the component. This will basically mean that now this component has something called 350 width. This is something we understand. Again, for example, we create a div tag, we give its width value. Again, we will talk width a little bit more in detail in the next session, but width basically means we specify how wide a component is supposed to be. In this case, we have said that this component is supposed to have 300 width. So I said, okay, no problem. However, when you give padding, padding is basically an additional extra space that you add. That's the key thing that you need to understand. Because when we align the components in future, when we start creating UI, we need to understand that why the components are not aligned properly. We assume, or we thought that, okay, this is 300 pixel width. So when we specify 25 means the 25 should be inside this component. However, that is not the case. This basically means that the component has a 25 pixel width. So from left, it will have 25 pixels. It will move, okay. Then the component will start with 300 pixels of width. So this component will have 300 pixels width. Plus, it will again have a 25 pixel width in terms of right. So the total size of this component will now be 300, okay, plus 25 of the left padding plus 25 of the right padding. So this will basically be 350 pixels. So now the component that you would see here is basically larger than the 300 pixel wide. So if you are using this padding, do always keep in mind that padding will add up to your total width. That's the whole key thing of it. Okay, so this basically entails that once you use the width of a component, if you have not specified the width, maybe if you have not specified, no problem. But if you have specified width, so the overall width of your component will be width plus the padding. And then again, if this is in this case 25, so most common mistake we do is we assume that because I have specified 25 here, so it should be 325 here. Okay, so this is what it should be, the whole space 0325. Why? Because 300 here, 25 here, fantastic. But remember, this basically means this property will add 25 pixels on the left and 25 pixels on the right as well. So on the both axes, 25 have been added. So basically, it will add 25 on the left as well as 25 on the right. Now you get a 300 pixel width. Let me show you what exactly I mean by this in code, and then hopefully we will try to understand it in a better way. Okay, so let's jump to VS Code now. Okay, so we have this basically code available. Now, what exactly we mean by this padding property? For example, I have created this div. Okay, so this element has a margin of 20, or let me just rename this, that this is the div, and then I can say br, and then I will specify inside this div there is some text. Okay, so this let me show padding example. Voila. Okay, so now I've written a simple div that has some content inside it, and this is we go. So we have a div tag here, not dic, div div. Okay, so this is what basically we mean. If I come inside the div, let's talk about the properties now. In this case, we have a 30 pixel margin at the left. For example, if I set it to 50, Control S, so this basically means the component starts from the 50 pixels. Okay. However, we can also give it, again, I'm not worried about the top, give it something called the width attribute as well. So width basically means that it should have 50 pixels of width. Control S. So now you see this pixel, this div previously, which was till this end of the screen, is now only 50 pixels wide. Let me increase it. So for example, I can say around 200. So now this pixel has a 200 width. Because it has a 200 pixel, the text is automatically wrapping around it and coming down because there's no further space for this component. Okay, so I can say some text here so the spelling makes sense. So this is what we basically mean. I said, okay, no problem. We have margin left, margin top, and we have width. So width basically means this component's entire width. I said, fantastic. Then let's just add something called a padding. Okay, so we say here's a padding. And let's add, for example, 20 pixels of padding. So as soon as I hit save, to note the size of it. So as soon as I save, see this, the size increased. Okay. Why did the size increase? Okay. So let's do one more magic thing here. So let me copy this entire div, Control C, move here and paste it. Okay. So let me say class, no KD pad. So there's no padding here. And then I can say class and add KD pad here. Okay. So maybe we can say yes pad. We have now two divs exactly the same. One has no padding and one has padding. So let's just create two styles for it. So we can say div dot no padding. Okay. And then we just remove the padding here, Control X. And we can say, okay, here is our div that has no padding to it. So see, because we changed the class, the CSS is completely gone. Let me this, come here, paste it, and then we can say this has something called yes padding. So as soon as I do, both exactly look same. Now here's the magic. So we add padding to it. Okay. So we just made two duplicates of the div text. We add some padding to it, and we remove the padding to it. We have a div here. Now, assumingly the idea of just explaining the width is here. So we have 200 pixel width. So this appears 200. We use the same width here as well. So 200 width here. However, when I add padding to it, for example, 25 pixels, Control S, see this component looks bigger. Why is that? That's the only key thing that you need to remember for now. Then we will be working with more. This appears bigger because yes, so we have a padding here which is again 200 pixels. Sorry, we have a width here which is again 200 pixels, but when we add padding to it, basically it's actually adding to the size of the component. Do remember that always. So 25 pixels on the left, 25 pixels on the right, and then we have this component. So now what padding does, it's just, you just look at it, this looks much better than this one. By default, the components start with right at the edge of each component's border. So we have given it a border of 1 pixels with a solid color, so we get a 1 pixel with a solid color. Okay. But if you don't use padding, this is what happens. So the component will start absolutely from the edge of the segment. Maybe you need that, but usually it's not recommended. It doesn't look very nice. However, this, you can see this is small space here, which basically makes it look more aesthetically pleasing. So again, CSS is all about designing. Even with a 10 pixel of a space means this is some gap here. And now this looks much better. That's the whole key thing you've done. Now you might have a heading. Okay. Idea here is that you might have a heading here. For example, I can say be 0 pixels. In this case, let's just have a 0 pixels. So it means that this component should start right from its previous component's border. So I'm having an image here and this image, and then I have a text heading up the bottom. So let's just do that. For example, this is again what I absolutely mean. I can create an image and I can say let's have an img tag, okay, and src, okay, and then let's use this image, Control S, and then we have an image available. Okay, so this image is a huge. I just use a random online source. So basically you can use a website like Unsplash, give it a resolution of an image that you want to follow, and you can use it. Okay, so now let's just come here and create a div tag or style image tag for this one as well. So I use img bracket start bracket close, and I can say, hey, the width I want this image to be is 200 pixels. Control S. So we have a 200 pixel width here. Okay, because this is what the whole idea is supposed to be. Then I can say, okay, once this is there, let's say, for example, the margin, because I have given it margin, and let me use margin left to be same as the previous one, so which is 20 pixels. Okay, sorry, 50 pixels. So margin left is supposed to be 50 pixels. So as soon as I do that, you will notice that the pixel image has basically moved 50 pixels here. Now image changed because we are using an online random image, which is basically based on nature. Give me any image that has water inside it. Okay, this is the link for image, any image that you want to use online that has a reference to it. Now coming back to our major point. Okay. So now see this is an image, and I want this to be heading of the image. So let me say, for example, in fact, let's do this. I don't want to delete the code for your reference. Control S. What happened here? Image padding would be 50 pixels. Control S. We can bring it our image back. Now what I want is basically to copy this this image as a complete thing. Okay. Then I give a div here, which basically has my random image as a title to it. So I can give, for example, h2, and then I can say, hey, hang on. Oops. Sometimes you just want to have this. Okay, so Control S. Now I have my random image here. However, I want this to be, for example, class. So I give it a class, and I can say head img. Okay, so this is a head img class, and I want to use that. Then after this, I want another div. Okay, and this div now contains a, so this is a random random image select uh, fet fetched from internet. Okay, so and then if I can use br, every time you refresh, the images will change. Done. Okay, Control S. So now we have this. Let's just create this as a beautiful web design whole layout. So by default, when you set this, okay, don't worry about this content here. Let me use HR, and then we can use HR for horizontal ruler. So we have a ruler here. Let's just separate this as a separate example. Now I have this image available. I want to set this as a complete one segment, okay, as a image gallery or anything that I want to use for it. So I have created a simple image, used a random link on the internet, so that every time we hit refresh, it changes it. Okay. Then I've created a div tag that basically has a heading inside it, and then I can use another div tag here. Okay. So because I'm using this, so I can say, okay, here's a class. Okay, and then this class can be my img body. Okay, so img body here, and because this is my heading, so I can say img heading. Okay, and because this is my image, I can use this and I can say, hey, let me give it a class as well, and this class can be, for example, img image. Okay, so let's just use image as image, and that's it. Now what I've done here is, this is a standard convention that we follow in CSS as well. Okay, I used a class called img image, I used the class called img head, I used the class called img body. Did you notice what happened? Yes, first we use an image img as a starting for the all class. Because you're going to do so much CSS of every single components, it's absolutely best to name your classes and CSS classes in a way that you can understand. Now when I come inside my code, I can very easily say, okay, here's a .img image. Okay, I want class to have that. Then I can have .img head, have something, okay, some code here. Then I will create another .img, and then this would be, for example, body. This will contain some code of body. Okay, so this is one way of understanding how my code is working. So I know now when I talk about image, img, I'm talking about this class means whichever tag has these .image, .head, .body, class names would automatically be using this style. Wonderful. Okay, so this is basically how we do. In previously we used div. We specified that any tag that has div.notepad class, then use it. When you don't specify any tag selector, you just give it a tag name. That means that now I can use any tag with this class name and the styles would be applied. Okay, that way I can have a broader way of customizing my code and reusing the code and reusing the style for other components as well. Okay, so now this means .image, whatever image will have this image class name will be applied. Understand? So this style will be applied on that. So let's just say, okay, I have this, let me make it a little bit bigger. So 300 pixels I want here. Margin left can be, for example, 50 pixels. We can say, okay, let me use 60 here. So I can say a little bit of record I want to be, and then that's it. Now let's just have it. If you want, you can specify border around it, but I don't want to play with the border for the image. Maybe let's just use a border. Okay, so we can say, okay, 3 pixel, I want a border. It can be a solid, and it can be, for example, an FFF would give me a gray round border. So I have this basically image with a very light white color of a border. or maybe you can specify this to be a black or whatever color you want. So I think that should do that. Okay, so Control S, and now we have an image with a black border around it. So then I come into head. Now what do I want for my head? Okay, I want the head to appear at this corner here. Okay, that's the key thing. So first we say margin left 60 pixels, Control S, they both align together. Okay, we say perfect, we're supposed to align together. Then we say, okay, because this is still going up, I want the margin maybe top to be 0 px. Okay, Control S. So what happens is this, now it's aligned together. So because I've specified it as 0 pixels, what this basically means that I want it to be there. At a certain point, you can go negative as well. Okay, but it's not recommended, but depending if you absolutely think that this component should be absolutely together, you can give a negative value as well. So sometimes, for example, -5 means that you just want a very little space. By default, even 0 will give you a teensy space, and you don't want that. Okay, in this case I can specify minus pixels, and now you see I have a very beautiful text appearing here. How about the body? Same thing we do. So we say, okay, here's the body. I want a margin, and okay, maximum width 3. What's happening? We can say margin, and left again needs to be the same thing. So for example, I specify 50 pixels, Control S, or sorry, 60 pixels. Okay, so now this text is again aligned to with it, and I say, okay, margin, let me say 0 pixels for that, Control S. So now it appears almost with a certain gap here. But if you don't want it, you can also specify the minus value with. Then we need to control the width of this component. So for example, if you specify the width can be, for I'm assuming everything is going at like 250 pixels. So if I specify 250 pixels, this it wraps around it. But if you give it a margin of left 60 pixels, means it has padding. And in fact, let's just give it a border so we understand it first. Let me give a border to it, and I can say 1 pixel having a solid value, and then the color can be anything. So if I select here, let me just use the green color, Control S. So now see this, we have this component's color available. Okay, because we have specified the width to 250, it uses 250. If I specify to 300, oops, not 300, Control S, so we have a 300 pixel width. But because we have not specified padding here, it starts absolutely at the corner. So I said, I don't like it, I need some padding to it. Then I can give it a padding maybe left. Okay, and then this left can be, for example, 10 pixels. So as soon as I do that, see this alignment now changes. So this is not exactly aligned. Then I can say, hang on, I need a padding right as well, bottom, and can also be 20 pixels. Okay, then I can say, hang on, padding right also needs to be 10 pixels. Okay, and then maybe I don't want it, or maybe I do. Okay, because it's starting with this border, so padding can be 10 pixels as well. So now you see we have it, and now we see, oh, okay, this component's alignment is completely changed. This does not look good. We can do one other lucky thing as well. So for example, I can create another div here outside the image, and let me bring this div here. So now with this is basically how our structure is looking. Okay, and I can say, okay, here's a div, and let me use a class, and I can say img component COMP. Okay, so okay, so now I have an img component or section would be better. So image section is there. So I created another div that has an image section, and inside this div I have the heading. Oh, I don't need that actually. Let me just Control X, put it outside it, and this is what I needed. So this div is there. Inside this, I have put an image, the div heading, and this. So there's like whole div. Inside this div, we have an image, we have this heading, and we have this component here. Now we come here. We say, wait. Let me use image section code. Then I can specify certain basic default properties for it. Let me use the color to be more, example, darker color. Hey, I need this. Okay, maybe like this, and then the pixel width can be, for example, 5 pixels. So I have this dark width of pixels, Margin left, I needed margin top, I needed probably, and then the padding can be there, for example, of 5 pixels, yeah, as a whole. So now there's a 5 pixel whole padding here. If I come down inside these components, so image is starting at the center. Now see this, so now all is organizing except this padding itself here. This padding is messed up because again we have width 300 specified, however we have not specified, we have not calculated for the this thing here. So in this case, basically what we do is we always either increase the component's previous width or reduce the width here. So if I need it to be fixed, I have to understand, okay, 10 pixels on the left, 10 on the right, that means 20, 300, this is 320. So I would set it to 80. Okay, so 80 would mean that 280 plus 90 plus 10 of the right will be 300. So this will be 300 and it will ensure that these components are aligned together. They are all fitting within one of these major components inside it. Okay. Wow, this is what we basically do. Okay, wonderful. So now you can see this, that I have this component aligned and I have this section created. Now for this main padding section, again, this is why we usually use the width in the first place. This is extending. By default, it's starting with the margin 60 pixels, and there is a padding of 5 pixels here. However, the right margin is just basically stretching towards the end of the border, and sometimes we don't need that. That's why we say we always use a property called width. We set it to, for example, 300 pixels. So that means that no matter what happens, your component always has that width. And we said, oh, okay, this is messed up. So we basically adjust our width according to our section size. So now we say, okay, where this is starting, there is, now we start calculating all the width again. And you see this is all messed up sections. Why this is messed up? Because we have added a padding left, which is a 10 pixels. So there's a padding added here. Okay, there is a padding for the image body. So maybe we can say I don't need a padding of 60 pixels from the, and then there's a margin as well. Okay, so maybe we said, okay, if there's a margin of 60 pixels here, do I need to set a margins of 60 pixels on the left image section? And then after that margin, there is a padding of 10 pixels and all that thing. So we just need to align all these segments together so that they don't go and mess things up. Okay. So in this case, we're going to say, hey, hang on. Let's just align this guy and then add this width to be, for example, 450. So that now it looks maybe 460, 30 because the 20 pixels of width was there. Now you see it looks very nice and beautiful. There's some space here, there's some space here, starting from the top little space, and we have sections here. Now we can control the body's margin. It's supposed to be minus, for example, 10. Control C so that we can reduce this space up a little bit more. Minus 20. So minus is there, you can use that, and then we have this section available. Okay. So I hope it explains how we use the margin, the padding, and the width properties as a whole to control the segment spacing within each section. Okay, so I will be uploading this entire source code, so you can find it in resources. Thank you, and see you in next class. We will talk a little bit more about height and width